Welcome to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I want to welcome you once again to my show. So, question for you. Do you find yourself getting easily wounded by the things that those close to you say and do? Well, if you said yes, then you may be taking things too personally. And today's show is going to focus on how to stop excessive personalization that's putting a hurt on you and your relationship. I'm also going to be answering 3 questions that I selected. The first one is, my husband always talks about his ex, and here I'm helping out a newlywed who's feeling hurt over the way her husband talks about all his ex-wives, and yes, there are many, and his ex-girlfriends too. So stick with me to find out how understanding what's behind his behavior is the key to short-circuiting her own hurt feelings. Second question I'm going to answer is called Bored Wife. Here I'm working with a husband who has tried to do everything to save his marriage, including reading a lot about love and partnership and changing his behavior, and he's utterly baffled as to why his wife continues to blame him for what he used to do wrong rather than appreciate the new him. So stick around to discover why she needs to cling to her hard feelings and what he can do to turn the tide with her. Third question is, problems in relationship. In this question, I'm helping out a guy who had a tiff with his girlfriend, and who she told him that she was fine with an issue and that she put it in the past. And the next thing he knows, she's playing the victim and breaking up with him. So stay with me to find out why he's so drawn to a relationship that's more like an emotional landmine field, and what he can do to free himself from the compulsion to live in a war zone. And of course, no Ask Dr. Love is complete without a reading between the sheets. So today I'm going to be laying this question on you. Just discovered that he uses Viagra, and I'm helping out a woman who found out that the man she's about to marry has been using Viagra since the beginning of their relationship. So find out how she can stop taking his penis prescriptions personally. Okay, so let's get on to the show. Excessive personalization. That's what it's called. And this is the technical term for taking things too personally. And it's actually a common cognitive distortion, which in lay terms is nothing more than a nasty trick that your mind plays on you. So do you find yourself getting insulted and hurt by your partner? Does your partner tell you that you aren't hearing him or her correctly? Does your partner often say to you things like, well, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant? Well, if you said yes to any of my questions, then you may be suffering from excessive personalization, which is causing you to overreact and misinterpret what you're seeing and hearing. And don't worry, you're not alone. Millions of people fall into excessive personalization, and it's a trap. And in addition to suffering personally, these same people get into real trouble in their relationships. And obviously, if you always think your partner is dissing you, fights are going to follow. So let me start by defining excessive personalization for you. First, let's define the word personalization, which is attribution of personal responsibility or causal role or blame for events over which a person has no control. Okay, you have no control, but you are assuming personal responsibility. Now, excessive personalization occurs when you automatically conclude that another person's behavior or mood is in direct response to you. Like, for example, she's in a bad mood, I must have done something wrong. Now, in terms of relationships, it's easy to see how this distortion can lead to chronic relationship conflict. Let me give you an example of how this happens. Doreen's husband has been coming home late from work for the past few weeks. Now, she automatically assumed that Leroy, that's her husband, his behavior was directed at her. That's personalizing. Now, once Doreen began personalizing, her mind was off and running, and she's concocting interpretations that tortured her half to death. So, he found another woman, he doesn't find me attractive anymore. Now, when these ideas came into her mind, she felt hurt, she felt angry. Then Doreen acted out her anger by whining, complaining, criticizing, attacking, and this triggered ANS arousal and withdrawal behaviors in her husband. His withdrawal in turn added fuel to her belief that he didn't love her anymore, and in no time a major war was in progress. Okay. That scenario is pretty typical. We'll get into that as we go on. So let me just say a little brief preface here about the difference between men and women when it comes to excessive personalization. We often notice that men can find it hard to accept responsibility when they cause emotional pain, and women are often all too quick to personalize and hold themselves responsible and accountable when there is no reason to do so. So, since women are especially prone to excessive personalization, we need to be aware of the tendency to wrongly assume that our partners are behaving in a certain way to intentionally annoy or provoke or defy us. So ask yourself, would my partner still engage in this annoying behavior if he lived alone? And did he act this way before I was on the scene? And very often, when you examine the issue with a cool eye, you're going to realize that the habit is not directed against you. So I have a woman who said to me, you know what, come to think of it, he was piggy and messy before. So she was all mad that he was leaving crumbs on the counter. He was this way before. Now, why do we take things personally? So believe it or not, excessive personalization grows out of a naturally occurring childhood thought process. So let me explain what I mean. Children are narcissistic by nature. I'm sure you've heard me say this quite a few times, meaning that they think of themselves as the center of the universe. Now, everything that happens is about them and because of them. This is just normal baby brain thinking. If mom and dad get divorced, it's because I made my mom and dad unhappy, and I didn't fix it. And to make matters worse, the narcissism of childhood is combined with a naturally occurring sense of omnipotence, omni meaning for everything, and potent meaning powerful. So kids think that they have the power to fix everything. They can fly, they can fix their parents' flaws. So for example, if parents get divorced, the kid's sense of omnipotence is going to make him or her feel like a failure that he or she didn't succeed in keeping mom and dad together. So what if you don't outgrow the narcissism and the omnipotent thinking of childhood? Then you become an adult who takes things too personally because you literally haven't outgrown the baby brain's way of looking at the world. And if this sounds like you, don't despair, because it's never too late to train your brain to think like a grown-up. So how to set yourself free. I have 8 steps for doing this. So the first one is start giving the benefit of the doubt. So if you have a habit of taking things personally, it means that you're apt to assume someone is directing some form of aggression towards you when they could just be joking around and having a bad day. So it might be your instinct to react emotionally, but from now on, why don't you try pausing for a second? Maybe it isn't about you. So learn how to control your emotional reactions and just don't jump to conclusions, which leads to step 2. Check it out. And I don't mean that you should check out of the relationship or emotionally check out. I mean, use my check out your suspicions technique. I fully outlined this in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your perceptions are correct. And you're going to do this and you're going to just say, did I read you right? Did I get this right? Because the thing is, you have to remember that through the echo process, our minds are always unconsciously hearing our parents speaking when we're talking with our partners. So we are automatically distorting, we're negatively distorting, so we need to check it out. Make sure that we are right. Check out our suspicions. Now, step 3 is speak up. If you're feeling put down, in addition to checking out, you want to let your partner know how you're feeling. So oftentimes the other person didn't even realize how hurtful or aggressive he or she seemed and how his behavior is affecting you. So you want to use I statements if this is recurring. You want to use nonviolent communication to try to end the situation and resolve any underlying issues. So for example, you'd use the neutral phrase when such and such is said or done, this is what I hear. Is that what you want me to think or feel? So you're speaking up and you're checking out at the same time. Now here's step 4. Open yourself up to multiple interpretations. Using this imaginary long-distance lens, step back and observe what's being said from a more distant perspective. And taking distance helps you to stop drowning in hurt and anger that comes with excessive personalization. And with practice, you're going to be able to cultivate the discipline of detachment so you can learn to watch yourself and the situation as observer and evaluator. And it's a tall order, but it's also a major spiritual accomplishment that can take years to master. But all the more reason to get started, because one small step at a time, because we do get better over time. Practice makes perfect. Now, step 5, refocus your attention. So when you take things personally, you shift your attention from what someone said or did to how you feel. So unless you move on from that point, it's likely that you're going to ruminate on the negative feeling and amplify it. Instead, focus on the other person. Look at how that person treats others. That person might tease or insult everyone he or she meets, and some people are just antagonistic in that way. So also consider the other person's insecurities. Could that person feel threatened by you in some way? And if so, don't feel so bad for being your awesome self. Think about how you can help this other person feel better about him or herself. And keep in mind that the other person may also have poor communication and emotional management skills. And imagine that there's an inner child inside that person acting out, and that person hasn't learned how to deal with things in a mature way. So it's much easier to be patient and feel compassionate when you visualize a learning child at the helm of his or her behavior. Now, here's step 6. Hear the pain in the other person, because the ultimate goal is to become strong enough internally that even when someone is actively saying you are responsible for this calamity, that you're making my life miserable because of you, this or that failed, our relationship is breaking up because you didn't show up, or any of a host of similar statements that we are all afraid of hearing, but we can still remember with utter clarity and poise that the person is speaking about themselves. They're telling us the extent of their pain. It's not a statement about ourselves. And this is simply the only language and form available to most people to express their pain. And that's the other person's words, and no matter how they sound to us, they are just an expression of their needs. And then we could just try to be more present and available to navigate the situation, to ask questions and understand what we said or did to upset the other. You know, one of us has to be a grown-up. Here's step 7. Remind yourself that you don't need anybody's approval. And if you're overly sensitive to how people treat you and you overreact often, you might have a strong radar for rejection, and you worry that you're doing something wrong if you pick up on any kind of displeasure and you want to fix it. But just because somebody isn't happy with you doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. I remember I always say to people, if he may have gas and you're not the beans. Okay? So just because somebody isn't happy with you doesn't mean you've done something wrong. And in many cases, it means that that person just isn't happy with him or herself and expects you to fill in the blanks, which is impossible, as we both know. Now, here is step 8. Stop taking compliments personally too, because if you base your self-worth on how often people compliment and validate you, then you're allowing yourself to decide how you feel based upon how others feel about you. So if someone compliments you, it's no more personal than a direct insult. They're simply calling it how they see it, and that may or may not be accurate. Only you can be the judge of that. And if someone compliments you, it doesn't make you a better person. It makes them a better person because they're taking the time to be supportive and encouraging, and your value remains unchanged because it's something that comes from within. Now, here's one last point I want to make. Excessive personalization is linked to our old scars, the scars from childhood. So let me spell this out for you. If you were blamed as a kid, if you were put down as a kid, you're going to learn to blame yourself. And when you grow up and you form an adult relationship, you're likely to hear your partner as blaming you even when he or she doesn't intend to be critical. And if you attack your partner for being critical, guess what? He or she is going to feel defensive and actually become critical of you. So to make matters worse, because your role models were critical, you very well may have learned to be critical of others, meaning you may pass on what was done to you on to others. Now here's where a vicious cycle comes in, because if you behave in a critical way toward your partner's naturally going to respond to you by being more critical of you. And now you're being put down, which only fuels more excessive personalization. So in the end, you want to free yourself of excessive personalization. And to do this, you need to identify and heal those old scars. And my book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, is going to show you how to do just this. And as your old scars heal, your mind is going to stop tricking you into seeing and hearing your partner as your parent. So remember, our minds play this trick on us so that we can dredge up the pain of the past in order to heal our old scars. And obviously, when we dump all this old emotional baggage on our partners, not only do we not heal, we just create more emotional chaos and we ruin our lives and our relationships. But the good news is that you can heal your old scars using the steps I outline in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye. And then when you do, something happens. It's amazing. You stop hearing and seeing your partner as your parent, and the excessive personalization that's wrecking your relationships just stops. Alrighty, I'm going to take a brief break and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm talking about why we take things personally and how to stop. So this is the time in the show I call Dr. Love's Quickie, so we got to get to it fast. It's a short segment. When you take things personally, remember, your feelings are continually at the mercy of others, whether they attacked you personally or not. And this is never healthy in a relationship, and it's no way to live. So if you're somebody who tends to take things that people say or do personally, then I want to share with you a little trick I've found that really helps. And it involves understanding why people do what they do and seeing that often what they do has nothing to do with us and that therefore there's no need to take it personally. And I'm going to share this trick through 2 relationship principles. Principle 1, people are often selfish. Now, this may sound cynical to you, but bear with me. I think it's an undeniable fact that we all have selfish tendencies. And some of us are more selfish than others. We know this. And some of us can become selfish in the right circumstances. But by understanding and accepting that people are sometimes selfish, we understand that they're going to think and act in terms of what is best for them. And they'll only see things from their point of view. They'll want to be right about things. They'll want to have things their own way. They'll not think about how what they say and do affects others and so on. So sometimes people will do this simply because they're motivated by selfishness, and you have to remember that you have to take everything as a mirror of who they are. I always say step back and watch the show. So for example, if someone cuts you off when you're cycling, don't take it personally. Just say to yourself, this person has shown me how selfish he or she is by cutting me off. Nothing personal. People are always, think of it as little children struggling to keep their head above water, and their arms are flailing, and sometimes their arms are hitting us and whacking us because this is what they need to do to stay afloat. Principle 2, people always have a reason for doing what they do. And this principle is one that I learned about some time ago. And this principle doesn't mean that people are always right about what they do, and it doesn't mean that they should be excused for their actions, but it just means that they themselves have a reason. And it kind of goes to what I was saying before. It may be conscious, probably unconscious. It comes out of past unmet needs, old scars, current needs, wants, unresolved issues, lack of empathy, narcissism. So people do what they need to do because of the baggage that they're carrying, and you need to, again, step back, watch the show, and realize that it's nothing personal. They're doing what they need to do to stay afloat. They have their issues, and you can turn things around and say that their behavior really belies who they are. And this is going to help you shift the focus away from yourself, which is why you take things personally in the first place, and place it back on them, which is going to help you not take things personally. Now let me give you a couple of tweets. Before letting your nose get out of joint, confirm that you got your partner's actual point. Biggie. Remember, check it out. Taking things too personally is the formula for relationship misery. To avoid relationship strain, train your brain. And when you both feel understood, you are healing each other's old scars from childhood. That is the truth, because you're giving each other what you never got, and as you feel more and more understood and healed, it's amazing. You stop excessive personalization. Taking things too personally is a crappy way to be. Take a strain off your brain. One of the brain's nastiest tricks is assuming that your partner is giving you the nicks. Remember that. I'm going to have to make some t-shirts for you. The brain can be a pain, and thinking everything is your fault is a painful form of internal assault that can lead your partner to make a permanent pole vault. That was a big one. And last but not least, when you wrongly assume your relationship faces doom. Because obviously no relationship can survive under excessive personalization. Then we're attacking each other, then we're counterattacking. So, and here's a tip for you. Cognitive distortions like excessive personalization are exaggerated or irrational thought patterns that are believed to perpetuate the effects of psychological states like depression and anxiety. And cognitive psychologist Aaron Beck laid the groundwork for the study of these distortions, and David Burns continued the research on this topic in that famous Feeling Good Handbook presented back in 1969, and it showed information on all these thought patterns along with a proposal on how to eliminate them. All right, I'm going to take a brief break, and when I come back, I'm going to lay some questions on you. Be back in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf. It's my pleasure to be with you again today, talking about how to stop taking everything so personally, how to heal old scars, and stop taking things personally, and your relationship just flourishes immeasurably. So now I'm going to bring some of these points home to you through the questions that I've selected. So the first one is, my husband always talks about his ex. Dear Dr. Love, thanks to your site, at least it gives me a clear mind. I've been married for 7 months. My husband and I are living together. We have no kids yet. He has 2 grown-up kids with his girlfriend before. He didn't marry the woman, and he got married twice and got divorced twice as well. Now that we're living together, he always talks about his ex. Not just his exes, but as well his past girlfriends. And I'm the sort of person who doesn't want to talk about my ex-boyfriend because I don't really see a point of talking about it as it's past. And if he asks me about my ex-boyfriend, well, that's okay. That's the only time I talk about it. And I just do a brief one, but not to extend that everything my boyfriend did to me. Now, he talks about his ex-girlfriends like he used to date this ex-girlfriend and he picked her up on her job and he took her to her flat. And he talks about his ex-wives and how his ex-wife messed up his life. And when he talks about his ex-girlfriend, he tells me that the girl reminds me so much of his ex-wife. Come on, Dr. Love, we're not kids here. Why is he always talking about his past? What does my husband want to emphasize here? And to be honest, it does hurt me. But the problem with me is I just keep it inside of me and I start to feel upset and questions fly in my mind during bedtimes. And sometimes I ask myself, does he really respect my feelings? And should I tell him to stop talking about all of his exes and that he's married already, and instead of having a little conversation all the time, just keep it to a normal talk instead of talking about what happens to him and his exes? And I'm not happy with my feelings. And this doesn't happen once, it happens many times, and I'm fed up. So thank you for taking the time to read my letter, and all the best to you. And she signs it, confused and hurting. Okay, so I am very sorry that your feelings are hurt. Now, check it out. The reasons your feelings are hurt is because you are falling into what I'm talking about today, excessive personalization. So how do I know this? Because when you say that you wonder if he respects your feelings, you interpret his discussion about his former wives and girlfriends as his way of purposely disrespecting you. But could there be another interpretation for his behavior that has nothing to do with you? In other words, could he be, as most people often are, self-absorbed and just speaking out loud to himself? So often we make the mistake of thinking that people are actually talking to us when they're actually just venting whatever is troubling them and doing what they need to do to just get some relief from their own internal emotional pressure. So I think he's just venting his own pain, and you just happen to be in the vicinity hearing it. And I'm betting that he's carrying some feeling that's unresolved regarding his exes, because obviously we don't keep going back over and over and over the same issue unless we have some unresolved feelings. Now, maybe he feels hurt or wronged or angry, but the bottom line is we don't keep ruminating and mentally revisiting issues and people from our past unless we're feeling unresolved. Now, I could be wrong, and you could have married a guy who's mean and likes to make you jealous, but I'm not banking on that theory. So let's move on to your next question about whether you should tell him to stop talking about his exes. Well, first of all, nobody likes to be told what to do, right? So if you can't tell him to button his lip, what can you do? Talk to the guy. So if you notice, you told me that you keep your feelings inside, and this habit of yours is only making your issue mushroom. So when you talk, you could go the route of telling him straight out how you're feeling about what he's saying. But if you tell him that you're feeling disrespected, he's going to feel attacked and become defensive, especially since I don't think he means to hurt you. And if he becomes defensive, he won't hear you at all. So I think the better approach is for you to focus on the fact that he doesn't even know how you feel. And I'm talking about the fact that your guy lacks what I call partial identification. And this fancy term just means that he hasn't learned to put himself in your emotional shoes and think before he speaks. And the skill needs to be developed, and you're just the person who can help him to do it. So rather than tell him how you feel about what he's saying, which won't develop partial identification in him, I suggest another type of communication that will help him realize how you're feeling without your having to spell it out. And this way, you'll be killing two birds with one stone. You'll be developing his partial identification skills, and you'll be cluing him in on how you feel at the same time, and all without sparking his defensiveness. Sound good? Where do I sign, right? To do this, ask a question like, when you speak about your exes, I'm not sure how you want me to feel. Now, at this point, you can check out your interpretation by saying, do you want me to feel hurt or disrespected? Now, when you ask this question, it will wake him up to the fact that you are feeling hurt and disrespected. Then he'll probably say, but of course I don't want you to feel that way. This way, he'll realize how you're feeling without your making him feel attacked. Then once you're talking, you could ask him what's troubling him. And getting him to talk about the unresolved issue will help him put the old business behind him. Now, my book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, is going to give you even more pointers on how you can talk to him so that he will want to listen and not become defensive, and how you can listen to him and help him put his exes permanently to bed. And I didn't mean that literally. Okay, so I've really given you the blueprint now. Follow what I said step by step, and you're going to feel better, and you're going to help him talk to you and get past his exes. All right. Now here's another question for you. It's called Problems in Relationship. Hi, Dr. Love. Mine would be quite a long story, and really, I thank you for the patience and time you take to read everything. So here it goes. I got to know my girlfriend in school. We were very loving when we first got together, after being together for around 2 months. And her mom started to disapprove of our relationship and thinks that my feelings for her daughter aren't real and that I do not love her. What made my girlfriend's mom have this thought could be this. One day I was texting my girlfriend, and I asked her if I could go back to my previous part-time job during the holidays. Her reply was no at that time, and I asked her for the reason for not letting me go back to my previous part-time job, but she didn't want to tell me anything. And I found her unreasonable, so I got kind of angry and somehow showed her attitude and had a quarrel with her, and she switched off her phone. And my girlfriend told me about her being very upset at the moment. So I tried calling her and sending her an SMS apologizing to her for being rude earlier on. After she switched on her mobile, I asked her what happened just now that made her so upset. She said that it was nothing much, it's past already, don't bring it up. So naturally I thought that she was okay, and we carried on our relationship perfectly. Well, that was the first time she cried really hard. Now that she suddenly wants to break up with me, claiming that if I really loved her, I wouldn't have caused her to cry and hurt her. So I told her that it's impossible to have a perfect relationship in this world, but now that I know the reason behind it, I never let her cry I didn't want to let her cry anymore after that incident, and I was concerned, and I did try asking about what was happening, but she didn't want to tell me. And if you had told me the reason, I wouldn't have had the quarrel with you. My girlfriend is really someone who likes to keep her feelings to herself and not really willing to share with me despite my showing concern toward her. And right now, she's still very angry at me for hurting her. She said that I am not the right guy for her because I made her cry and I hurt her. And inside me, I'm just wondering if she still has feelings for me, and what she said is just in a moment of anger. And I would like to add, she's still very unhappy with me. She isn't replying to my texts, and now she wants to leave me, and she's still angry with me. And does she show that she has any feelings for me? So you mean, does she have feelings for you because she's still angry? So I hope to hear from you soon, as I haven't been eating and I haven't been sleeping for the past weeks, and I appreciate it a lot. And you signed your letter. I need advice. And yes, you do need advice, my friend, because I got to say, relationships can be heaven on earth or hell on wheels. And yours right now is hell on wheels. Now, I hear clearly that you want to get your ex back. despite the fact that this girl is putting you through hell and back. Now, I mean, this girl is really, really high maintenance, and I commend your efforts to repair your relationship with and reconcile with her. But let me just do a rough sketch of the anatomy of the downward spiral leading to your breakup. And rather than simply taking a job over the holidays, you did the right thing. You called to ask her how she felt about the idea. Now, that was a very relational act on your part, meaning you took her feelings into account before making a decision that would affect her and your relationship. Bravo. Now, instead of responding to your question in a mature way, she simply told you no. Now, you asked her to talk with you about why she objected, but she refused to disclose her thoughts and her feelings. She stonewalled you, which was not relational on her part. Now, I understand her shutting the door on any discussion that emotionally triggered you, but her rigid position and refusal to talk with you made you understandably angry, and then you acted on your anger by giving her attitude, and the argument erupted. From that point on, you were demonized by her and her mother for having committed various atrocities, including hurting her and making her cry. Now, what is wrong with this picture? A lot. First of all, I'm going to talk about her role in the fiasco. For starters, as you said, she doesn't talk about her feelings. And the reality is a relationship can only work if both parties commit to describing their thoughts and feelings and why they have them. Now, instead, she acted her feelings out by just slamming the door on you and saying no. Next, she fell into innocent victim routine. Now, she's carrying a grudge by holding on to this poor me act by saying that you hurt her, you wronged her, you made her cry, and all of which proves to her that you aren't the right boyfriend for her. Now, by playing the victim, she is unconsciously arranging to not take a look at her role in the dispute and take responsibility for what she did to provoke you. And I promise you, if she kicks you to the curb, she's going to repeat this pattern over and over again. And the bottom line is no relationship is possible unless both partners are willing to look at their own role in creating and maintaining fights. Now, your ex sounds like what I call a professional victim, and I don't hold out much hope that she's going to be able to maintain a relationship with you or anyone else until she faces this pattern in herself and resolves it. And by the way, I think her mother may be encouraging her to play the innocent victim role. Now, let me also say a few words regarding her needing to end it because you hurt her. Give me a break. No matter how hard we try to not hurt each other, we end up saying and doing things that don't land right with others. And the goal isn't to be perfect. That's not humanly possible. The goal is to strive to be as thoughtful as we can at every possible moment, especially when we're angry. And when we fail, we have to invite our partners and those close to us to share with us how we let them down. And then it's our jobs and it's our partner's jobs to tell us in a constructive, mature, concise, cool, and non-attacking way how we missed the mark and what they would prefer from us in the future. That's my XY formula. And this is how we work together to make our relationships stronger and more loving. And through this process, each of us has the power to make the world a better place, literally to create world peace, one relationship at a time. So your girlfriend has a lot to learn about herself as well as the world of relationships. And I would tell her that what I said about your mutual roles in this dispute, what she did wasn't optimal. And if she's willing to hear the truth and work on cleaning up her side of the fence, meaning get in touch with her true feelings and talk about them and not act them out by stonewalling and issuing orders telling you no, right? Not becoming aware that she stonewalls and issues commands rather than get in touch with her feelings of hurt. I do think that she felt hurt and rejected when you suggested working rather than spending all your time with her over the holidays, okay? And last but not least, she has to become aware that she plays the victim as a way of not looking at her own role in the fights and conflicts. And then if she doesn't do all this, there's no hope for a relationship with her. And as for you, as you realize the hard way, action begets a counter reaction. So you became angry and then you derailed by acting out your anger, giving her attitude, instead of using my XY formula, which consists of describing what the other person is doing and how you feel about it. So your job is to work on not allowing yourself to act out when you're provoked or triggered. And otherwise, you're going to fall into the same pattern with your next girlfriend, and then your conflicts are also going to turn into out of control fighting again. So when you talk to her next, start by taking responsibility for your own role in the fight, and then tell her what I said about her involvement. And ask her if she's willing to own her part of the problem, but don't hold your breath. And if she surprises me and sees her role, then there is hope for your relationship. But if she won't cop to her own stuff, there's no hope here. In which case, you're going to need to move on, breathe a sigh of relief, and consider yourself fortunate that you were freed from a partner who is guaranteed to drive you insane. Okay, I'm going to take a brief break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and it's my pleasure to be with you. You may have noticed if you're watching live over Google Hangouts or YouTube that I take a break and I pause and I don't speak. That's because we are making radio history together here, because I'm broadcasting the show live over Hangouts and YouTube, but it is afterwards being broadcast over terrestrial radio. And so I need to put a break in there so that the commercials that get put into the terrestrial radio get inserted. Actually, my syndicator said I should kind of take the time to read the commercials for you on the Hangouts so that at least you hear what I'm saying during the commercials and find out what I'm talking about. So maybe we'll do that in the future. All right, here's the next question. Bored wife. Hello, doctor. I'm Ben, and we live in the UK since 2011. I'm married to an awesome woman since 2000. And we have 3 lovely girls, 7-year-old twins, and 7-year-old twins and an 11-year-old. And I'm an honest man and a father, and I think I always tried to keep my eyes on my wife. I mean, I tried to look only at her and avoid looking at different women. Today, I'm devastated. 3 months ago, I had a big argument with my wife. It was for sex initially, but then we finished with me going for work without taking my mobile with me. The second day, I tried to ask forgiveness and to please her in any way. 2 days after this, she left the country for a couple of days abroad. It's a very long story and complicated, starting back in November of 2012, and it came up in January 13th. So in January, I started to panic in a serious manner. I saw something that made me search deeper. In November, my wife started to use EnglishTown.com in her attempt to improve the English language. Well, this site seems now for me like a dating site because there are thousands of people, most of them for chat and dating only. And she started to make new friends, a lot of new friends, especially male friends. And in December already, she got a few close friends exchanging life details and some sweet words. English language is so sweet sometimes. So I was so wrong these last 3 months. I tried to do everything to save my marriage. I changed all my behavior. I started to read a lot about love and partnership. I tried to talk a lot with my wife. At the beginning of this, chatting with my wife, it was the worst. We got into arguments every time, big words, sharp words, old resentments, everything possible, long hours into the night. And after 1 month, I managed to calm down my voice and to use some of your tactics to listen and avoid shouting again. And at that moment, my wife didn't talk so much with me. I used to talk and talk and talk, and she was looking like absent or doing her nails or anything else. And she told me a few times that she had enough talk. She was trying now to avoid talking. She didn't believe in anything. She tried to push me to have new friends too. She tried to convince me that it was not wrong to talk with friends online because they are anyway far away and nothing can happen. I asked to see what they were talking about all day, and she showed me on a few occasions, and I saw for myself on other occasions. Yes, I spied. Shame on me. I found that she told me small lies. She disrespected me when I was phoning her or chatting her. She was chatting in the same time with other people, putting me last. And all this was so hard on me. But today I found out the worst. She refused to look me in the eyes in the last few months, and yesterday evening I tried again to explain what was happening, and I tried to say again that she must be doing something to hurt us. She says, like always, that she can't feel anything and that she used to say in months before to give her more time to see what's going to happen. So finally yesterday evening she finished with, I want to watch TV now. And I was working again last night, and it's true, my mind can be my biggest enemy. So we were talking about 4 days before when she was driving. It was a long drive. I came up with the idea that maybe she should have new partners or friends or try some new. Just before that I made a joke about two having sex together, and she answered maybe 3. And I've seen a sparkling in her eye, and then she said maybe we should be more freely libertines. And I remember she told me that before, and that it would be much better if we would only be friends. And so I continued with this idea, and she was very cooperative with the discussion. In the last 3 months, I was stressed about the issue. I felt my wife didn't want to talk to me, didn't appreciate me, argued with me about everything. Our sex was reduced to 1 or 2 minutes, and rarely, like once a week, despite my asking for it more. She didn't understand me, why I was so changed, why I care so much about her now, because she believes that I was so indifferent before. She's saying that she felt me only like I liked her body, she's good looking, and that she blocked all good memories somehow, that she's remembering now only the bad moments. I've been accused that I didn't love her in the last 13 years. I'm looking in our pictures and I can see her keeping her hands on me. I see her beautiful and natural smile. But this is very long. So this morning I woke up and I was very quiet, very upset. I couldn't smile at all. And she tried to make me talk. And she was asking and asking what happened, what happened. She thought that I made something happened over the night. And after many minutes, I was in the garage ready to leave for work, and she said, "If you want to say something, I'm listening." Finally, I asked again, "What do you want from life with us? Do you want to go any further or not?" And I got the same answer as usual, "I don't know." And I asked again something like, "What is your dream?" And I found that she's feeling something about another guy, a Moroccan guy, and that she started to feel something about 2 weeks ago, and it's stronger because we were in Italy last week and she couldn't speak to him during this week. And I insisted on finding out who it was. And when I found out, I felt like the entire sky fell down on me. It was one of her closest friends, but the one that I expected least. He's sending her texts in the middle of the night, talking to her. Okay, this is a very, very long question, so I've got to try to cut to the chase and see what your question is here. You can't eat, you can't sleep. That What is your question? I've never had such a long question. You're going to win my longest question award. So I need to see her happy. I want to stay, but I can't stay if she's unhappy. I need to be secure for tomorrow, and I want to know how I can have my wife back. I've tried driving the kids to school. Uh, I got a life insurance. I've tried to buy her jewelry, expensive things. I'm trying to talk to her every day. But what I see is that she's falling for this other guy. So what can I do? Should I leave home for a couple of weeks? What should I do? I'm a desperate husband. And you sign it, "I'm awake now, but I hope it's not too late." So this is an incredible mess. And I hear that you say you're awake, but unfortunately it feels like your wife is punishing you for all the years that you were asleep. And now she's using this other guy. She's dangling him in front of your face and torturing you by repeatedly saying that she doesn't know what she wants. Meanwhile, you keep bending over backwards to prove to her that you've changed. And in the process, you keep giving her everything and more. But the more you give, the more she dumps on you. So that pattern needs to stop. So remember, what doesn't work doesn't work. So you're now like a rat in a maze, only you aren't doing what a rat does naturally. Think about what humans do when they hit up against a dead-end wall. Humans keep banging their heads on the wall and they repeatedly do the same behavior that isn't working. But what does a rat do? It backs up and it finds another way out. So it's time to think and act like a rat and back up. And there's more. You're making the mistake of rewarding her mistreatment of you. And what do I mean by this? I get it that she's hurt and disappointed by how you used to behave. And now she keeps dumping on you no matter how well you treat her. So if you keep on giving to her, you're rewarding her dumping on you. In other words, you're teaching her that she can continue to crap on you, and you'll not only take it, you'll treat her nicely. So without knowing it, you're the author of your own abuse. So at this point, you need to pull the plug on this pattern and say enough. It's time to stop over-giving in actions. Now, next we need to find out the real reason behind her grudge holding. Because the first theory to explore is that she hasn't felt that you truly heard and understood where you went wrong with her. So to check if I'm right, ask her, "Do you feel that I fully understood what I did that didn't work for you?" Now, if she says you haven't, then by all means encourage her to tell you again. This time, make sure you've mastered all my listening skills. My book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, is going to show you how to do this. Now, for most couples, truly listening and understanding is what is needed to bury the hatchet. Now, if she still doesn't bury the hatchet after you have listened, reflected back, and truly understood, then let's explore the next possible roadblock, that she's afraid to trust you again for fear of being hurt and let down. So check this out. You could ask, are you afraid to let down your guard with me for fear I'll slip back to my old ways once you trust me again? If she says that this is true, then tell her that she doesn't need to drop her guard. She just needs to invest some time into rebuilding the relationship with you, and time is going to prove to her whether you've changed or not. Now, at this point, you need to respect yourself enough to put your foot down and demand that she poop or get off the pot. This means stop all her dallying with what's his name and put yourself into this relationship with and put herself into the relationship with both feet, so she can keep up her guard, but she can't keep playing both sides of the fence. Now, if she still insists on keeping up her flirtation and torturing you with it, and giving you the cold shoulder, then you need to back off and separate from her. And at this point, you'll need to tell her that she can let you know if and when she wants to try, but that you aren't going to continue investing in a relationship that she isn't willing to invest in. Now, if I'm right and she's getting off on torturing you to pay you back for your past mistakes, when you put your foot down and pull the plug, she'll stop her antics. So please let me know how you make out. Okay? Now comes the time in the show where we're going to read between the sheets. You know, I have a whole chapter in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye that I call the Battle of the Bulge, and I show how to read between the sheets to get to the real meat of the matter, because very often our sex wars are being fueled by other issues that are non-sexual. So it's very important not to get caught up in the overt content, because then you're fighting about the overt content and you're missing the real issue. So here's the question. Dear Dr. Love, I'm about to get married, and I found out today that the man I'm marrying has been using Viagra since we met, and I'm not quite sure how to feel about this. We haven't had a lot of physical time together as we live in different countries, even though we have known each other for more than 2 years. And I will be with him in a couple of weeks, and even though he said it has nothing to do with how much he desires me, it has affected my ego. I found out from a script, and he told me that we would have talked about it in our first year of marriage. Signed, taking his erectile problem personally. Okay, so you are in a self-imposed emotional jail that I call excessive personalization. This means that you aren't taking your fiance's you are taking his erectile dysfunction difficulties personally, and you're bruising your self-esteem and your psyche unnecessarily by thinking that his dysfunction is proof that you aren't desirable to him. And women are notorious for inserting their egos into situations that they shouldn't. And doing this is placing you between a rock and a very hard place, or I guess in a very not hard place. So if you want to step back, remove your ego from this situation and just listen to what I'm going to say with an air of detachment, because if need be, imagine you're thinking about someone else's situation. So I want you to know that there are so many cases of ED, or erectile dysfunction. So don't assume the problem has anything to do with his attraction to you. Now, if you are his first sexual partner, then you have no way of knowing whether or not he could perform with another woman. Okay? Now, I also want you to know that Viagra cannot give a man an erection if he's not attracted to the woman. In other words, he has to be sufficiently aroused for it to work. So I want you to step back and take your ego out of this. It's not about you. Don't assume it's about you. Look into medical problems, because very often lack of blood flow to the penis is a sign of arterial problems. It's sort of like your own window on how clogged your arteries are. Also, he may be taking drugs that can be affecting his erectile function. So I'm running out of time. I've posted this answer on my website. If you want to read everything on there, go to the website and you'll see it on this week's questions. So next week on my show, I'm going to have Jonna Spielbohr. She's a legal expert for Fox Television. She's an incredible woman. She's on Fox every week. We're going to be talking about how to consciously uncouple. She is an attorney, so she's going to speak about this from the legal point of view. It's going to be a great show. Also want to tell you that I'm going to be starting something new, and I'm going to reach out to you through social media to get your feedback. I'm going to be doing free online webinars where you can interact with me, ask questions. We're going to have like a group experience that's going to be incredible, and I'm going to do them on the topics that are meaningful to you. So look out for my questionnaire. So I'm going to ask you what topics you want me to do these on. And that's all I have for you this week on Ask Dr. Love Radio. And remember, step back, stop taking everything personally, and your relationships are going to flourish. See you next week on Ask Dr. Love Radio.